The Pandronians cried and begged and prayed, as one by one their allies abandoned them, their pleas echoing across dead space and ignored, just like their weak flesh would soon be left to rot. I was on Waypoint Station, a haven at the galaxy's edge, just trying to get drunk enough to forget. Forget Earth, forget the war, forget the faces of my dead. But this kid, this scrawny grey alien, Corvus, he wouldn't let me. He recognized me, or at least my species. "You're human," he said, staring with those watery eyes. I grunted, slamming another glass. "Please, you've got to help." So I almost laughed. Help? Earth was barely more than a cinder. Centuries of being the galaxy's bitch did that. We were bottom rung, the first called to fight and die, the last to get rewarded. "So your kind left us to rot first, kid," I growled. Every time we asked for aid, for supplies, for anything, the answer was always the same: silence and apathy. He looked down. Blue veins pulsed under translucent skin. I didn't know, I'm sorry." Sorry, as if that could bring back the dead. But something in his tone made me pause. This wasn't a politician or bureaucrat. This was a scared kid, watching his civilization vanish. "All right," I sighed. "I'm listening, but if this is a waste of time..." He told me everything. The virus sweeping their planet, millions dead in weeks. Cries for help met with deafening quiet. Gleaming cities turned to mausoleums, a species facing extinction, with no one left to give a damn. Except maybe us, humanity, the eternal underdog. I signaled the bartender for another round. It was going to be a long night, but as Corvus spoke, one thought crystallized in my alcohol-soaked brain. If humanity didn't help, no one else would. And the Pandronians, they'd just be another tombstone in the galaxy's potter's field of dead races. Not this time, not again. Fuck the Council. Fuck the League. Fuck 'em all. "Kid," I said, meeting those desperate eyes, "looks like you just enlisted Earth's finest, but I won't lie to you. This ain't gonna be easy. For your species to live, a lot of folks might have to die. Starting with me. You okay with that?" He nodded slowly. A flicker of hope, of fire, entered his gaze. I smirked. "Yeah, we were going to save these bony grey bastards, and maybe, just maybe, show the galaxy what humanity was really made of. It was time to remind them, the hard way." The kid took a long pull from his drink, his throat bobbing as he downed the neon swill. He set the glass down with shaking hands. I could tell he was barely holding it together. Couldn't blame him. "There's one last hope," Corvus said, voice raspy. "A cure, at least that's the rumor." I raised an eyebrow. "A cure? Why haven't I heard about this?" "Because the only one who might have cracked it is a hermit scientist, named Zephyr. He's a genius, but a recluse. Been holed up in his lab on Noxious Prime for years, working on some secret project." I let out a low whistle. Noxious Prime. Now there was a death trap if I'd ever heard of one. Toxic atmosphere, hostile fauna, and no law to speak of. Even the most hardened mercs gave that rock a wide berth. "Let me guess," I said. "You want to mount a rescue op? Extract this Zephyr guy and his miracle cure?" Corvus nodded miserably. "We've tried, but we don't have the ships, the weapons, the manpower." His voice cracked. "No one will help us." I closed my eyes. Memories flashed behind my lids. Pleas for aid met with silence, human colonies burning, as the Galactic Council debated and delayed, the bitter weight of abandonment. "I'll do it," I said. "I'll get your cure." Corvus blinked. You will. But Earth, I thought." "Earth remembers," I growled. "We remember being left to twist in the stellar wind, and we won't let it happen to anyone else, not while we're still breathing." The kid looked dubious. I couldn't blame him. Humanity's rep wasn't exactly sterling. We had a tendency to shoot first and ask questions never. Corvus had probably heard the same rumors as everyone else. Humans were impulsive, reckless, more likely to start a fight than finish one. "I know what you're thinking," I said. "But if there's one thing humans are good at, it's defying expectations. We're tough, adaptable, and loyal to a fault, especially when our friends are on the line." I thought of my old squad, The 501st Hellhounds. We'd been through some shit, seen things that would make most species puke their guts out, but we always had each other's backs no matter what. If I put out the call, they'd come running. I knew it in my bones. "Give me 24 hours, I told Corvus. "I'll round up the best damn team of mercs this side of the Orion Arm. We'll get your doc and his magic potion, cure, whatever it is, and we'll shove it down the throats of anyone who gets in our way." A spark of hope kindled in the kid's eyes. It was a start. I slammed back the rest of my drink and stood, chair scraping across the grimy floor. I had some calls to make. Gunnar, Zara, Tex, Riggs. The gang was getting back together. One last ride. As I strode out of the bar, I couldn't help the fierce grin that split my face. The galaxy had counted us out, written us off as primitive, impulsive, unworthy. But now they were going to see what humanity was made of. We were the underdogs, the long shots, the last resort, and we were about to show the universe why you never ever bet against the human race. The Hellhounds were going hunting, and heaven help any bastard that got in our way. Our ship cut through the toxic green haze, lurching as it fought Noxious Prime's violent crosswinds. The planet looked just as inviting as its name suggested. Swamps belched up clouds of corrosive mist, and jagged peaks clawed at the sickly sky. It was like every inhospitable rock humans had ever set foot on, cranked up to 11. "Feels just like home," Hawkins quipped from the pilot's seat, his hands dancing across the controls. The wiry bastard had a talent for understatement. "If home was a radioactive cesspit populated by things that want to eat your face, sure," Riggs muttered, hunched over his console. He was the squad's resident tech wizard, as handy with code as he was with a plasma rifle. "Cut the chatter," I said, checking my gear for the umpteenth time. "We've got a job to do." As we skimmed over a bubbling tar pit, I thought back to the stories of the first humans to leave Earth, those pioneer explorers setting out in ships barely held together by spit and prayers, not knowing if they'd ever see home again. What must it have been like to chart a course through an infinite black frontier, destination unknown? In a way, we were those explorers reborn. Hellhounds on the hunt, chasing down hope for a dying species. It was enough to make you feel downright heroic. If you ignored the fact that we were a bunch of roughneck mercs, in it as much for the payday as the altruism. Well, maybe a little more for the payday. Our musings were cut short by a screech of rending metal. The ship bucked like an unbroken bronco, nearly throwing me into a bulkhead. "The hell was that?" I yelled. Hawkins fought with the yoke, teeth gritted. "We clipped something, port stabilizers gone." "Strap in," I barked. "We're going down hard." The ship plunged through the soupy air, alarms blaring. We hit the ground like a meteor skidding through a tangle of luminescent vines before slamming to a halt against a squat obsidian monolith. Groans filled the cabin as we pried ourselves out of our harnesses. Doc, our medic, set about checking for injuries with brusque efficiency. Miraculously, we were all in one piece. The ship, however, was a mess. Emerald sap oozed through cracks in the hull, hissing and popping where it met exposed wiring. "Riggs," I called, "damage report." The tech hauled himself to the half-crumpled analyzer, fingers flying over the keys. "Hull integrity's shot. We've got breaches on 3 decks, and the engine's spewing reactor fluid. I can rig a patch, but it's going to take time." I glanced out the fractured viewscreen. The landscape shimmered with an oily iridescence, broken by jutting spires of volcanic rock. Tendrils of mist curled around the wreckage, almost beckoning. "Do what you can," I told Riggs. "The rest of you gear up, we're securing the perimeter." We assembled by the twisted remains of the airlock, checking weapons and seals. The atmosphere out there wouldn't liquefy our lungs immediately, but I wasn't keen on breathing it for long. With a hiss of pressurized air, we stepped out onto the surface of Noxious Prime, onto another hostile world, far from home, chasing a dying hope. Just another day for the Hellhounds. We trekked through that eerie, shimmering hellscape, keeping a wary eye out for movement in the underbrush. Our armor's cooling systems whined with the effort of keeping the corrosive air at bay. The place smelled like a chemical spill, all harsh fumes and bitter tang. Riggs took point, scanner in hand, trying to pick up the trail of Dr. Zephyr's hidden lab. The eggheads had triangulated its rough location based on fragments of intercepted Pandronian transmissions. Apparently, the good doctor was as paranoid as he was brilliant. He'd gone to ground like a rat in a dumpster, determined to keep his research out of the wrong hands. Considering the shitstorm his world was in, I could hardly blame him. A howl pierced the gloom, setting the hairs on the back of my neck standing to attention. It was answered by another, closer, then another. Yellow eyes glinted in the dark, the local wildlife coming out to play. "Contact!" Hawkins yelled, an instant before a snarling mass of claws and teeth burst from the undergrowth. It was like a cross between a panther and a giant centipede, all rippling muscle and segmented carapace. More creatures followed, hissing and spitting. We opened fire, the night lit by the strobe of muzzle flashes. Plasma bolts and tracer rounds stitched glowing patterns in the air. The creatures' hides were tough, resisting our shots. One of them barreled into Hawkins, bearing him to the ground in a thrash of limbs. I drew my combat knife and leapt forward, burying the blade to the hilt in the thing's eye socket. It shrieked and convulsed, ichor spurting. More creatures swarmed in, a writhing tide of fangs and fury. We fought and bled, and inch by inch we drove them back. By the time the last beast fell twitching to the blood-stained earth, we were panting and drenched with sweat. Doc moved among us, slapping temp patches on the worst of the cuts and gashes. "Hell of a welcome wagon," Hawkins panted, prodding a oozing carcass with his boot. "No shit," I said. "Let's hope the good doctor appreciates us crashing his private jungle party." Riggs, who'd managed to keep his scanner intact throughout the fracas, gave a low whistle. "I'm picking up an energy signature, about 2 clicks northeast, matches the profile of a Pandronian power source." "Then that's our heading," I said. "Move out, hellhounds, and stay alert. I get the feeling the welcome mat's still got a few more nasty surprises in store." If I'd known then just how right I was, I might have called a vote for hauling ass back to the ship and leaving Zephyr to his own devices. But we had a mission, and the hellhounds always saw a mission through, to whatever end. We slogged onward, following Riggs's scanner through that nightmarish alien swampland. The twisted obsidian spires grew thicker as we went, looming like the teeth of some slumbering beast. That sinking feeling in my gut, the one that always presaged the shit hitting the proverbial fan, grew with every squelching step. It was almost a relief when the ambush finally came. A lance of searing light speared out from the shadows, catching Hawkins high in the chest. He went down with a grunt, biomonitor shrilling. More beams followed, a deadly lattice that sent us diving for cover behind the Ebon spires. "Sniper!" Doc yelled, dragging Hawkins behind a rocky shelf. I risked a glance, caught a glint of a scope in the dimness. "Riggs, can you get a lock?" "Negative," he called back, huddled over his scanner. "They're jamming me somehow. I'm getting readings all over the place." Another volley of fire, sparks showering where it struck stone. This was no Pandronian weapon. The beams were too powerful, too precise. That left only one possibility. "Scavengers," I growled. It made sense. Noxious Prime was a treasure trove of lost Pandronian tech. With the planet abandoned, it would be a prime target for the galaxy's bottom feeders, swooping in to strip it clean. They must have tracked our descent, followed us from the crash site. And now they had us pinned like fish in a barrel. I keyed my comm, set it to localized burst. "Hellhounds pattern Zeta 5, Riggs Doc lay down suppressing fire. Hawkins with me, we're going to flank these bastards." Acknowledgement lights winked. On my mark, Riggs and Doc popped from cover, spraying the sniper nest with a hail of plasma. The fire slackened just for a moment as the scavengers ducked. It was enough. Hawkins and I dashed from the spire, dashing in a zigzag pattern to throw off their aim. Shots sizzled past, close enough to make my eyes water from the heat. We closed the distance, leaping from rock to rock until we could see them, a half-dozen figures in scavenged armor, crouched around a portable E-web cannon. "Frag out!" I yelled, lobbing a grenade. It detonated in their midst with a concussive whump, sending them flying. Hawkins and I were on them before they could recover, rifles barking. 2 went down, center mass hits. The others scrambled for their weapons. I closed with the nearest, smashing the butt of my rifle into his faceplate. It cracked, bloodied face visible behind it. His knife lashed out, catching me across the ribs. I felt the blade grate on bone. My return kick sent him sprawling. A quick double tap, and he was still. I spun, looking for my next target, but Hawkins had already dispatched the rest with ruthless efficiency. The last scavenger was crawling for his blaster. I put a bolt through his spine before he made it halfway. And then it was over. The sudden silence broken only by the hiss of cooling weapons and our labored breathing. I touched a hand to my side, felt the slick of blood. Just a graze. I'd had worse sparring with Riggs. "Clear," I called. "Clear," Hawkins confirmed, kicking a scavenger's blaster away from a twitching hand. Riggs and Doc emerged from the spires, picking their way through the sprawled bodies. Doc made a beeline for me, medkit in hand, but I waved him off. "Check Hawkins," I said. "That sniper shot looked nasty." Doc nodded, turning to where Hawkins was leaning against a spire, hand pressed to his chest. He pulled it away, revealing a blackened divot in his armor, edges still glowing faintly. The ceramic had held, barely, but I didn't like the way he was wheezing. "Sit rep," I demanded. "Cracked rib maybe 2, he grunted. "Bruised sternum, nothing I can't handle." Doc ran his scanner over the injury, mouth pressed into a grim line. "You're right about the ribs, but there's fluid building up around your lungs. Possible pulmonary contusion. You need rest, maybe a week in a real sick bay." "Sure, I'll just take a quick jaunt to the nearest 5-star med center," Hawkins said, rolling his eyes. "In case you forgot, we're in the ass end of space with a job to do." I held up a hand, forestalling the argument I could see brewing. We were cut off, comms jammed on a hostile world. Our ship was barely spaceworthy, and now 2 of my men were wounded, 1 badly. By all rights, I should scrub the mission right here and now, get us back into orbit and call for a medevac. But then I thought of Corvus, that skinny grey kid, eyes wide with desperate hope. I thought of the Pandronians, a whole species circling the drain while the galaxy looked the other way. And I thought of Earth, of the human colonies left to burn as the Council debated and dithered. No, we were the hellhounds. We finished what we started no matter the cost, even if that cost was our own blood. I looked at Hawkins, at the determined set of his jaw beneath the pain, at Doc, grim but resolute, at Riggs, who gave me a nod, scanner already out and searching for Zephyr's trail. My crew, my responsibility. "We keep going," I said. "For now, Doc. Dose Hawkins with enough stims to keep him on his feet. Riggs, find us that lab, double time." Orders given, decisions made. All that was left was to see them through. One way or another, Noxious Prime would be a reckoning. For the Pandronians, for the Hellhounds. For all of us. My gut clenched as I looked down at Doc, his face pale beneath the sweat and grime. The stims were keeping him conscious, but only just. He needed more than a quick patch job in the field. But Zephyr was close, I could feel it. The Pandronians were counting on us, on me. "Hawkins, Riggs," I said, the words like ashes in my mouth. "Go on ahead, find Zephyr, get that cure." They hesitated, eyes flickering to Doc's prone form. "We can't just leave you," Riggs started, but I cut him off. "You can and you will, that's an order." I softened my tone. "I'll take care of Doc, you two finish this." A long moment, then Hawkins nodded. "Aye, Captain, we'll get it done." They vanished into the fungal jungle, Riggs's scanner casting eerie shadows. I turned back to Doc, my oldest friend, and started rummaging through his medkit. "You're a damned fool," Doc rasped. "Splitting the team, classic blunder." "Yeah, well, I never claimed to be a tactical genius." I found a coagulant spray, applied it liberally to his wound. "That was always your department." "Flatterer," he coughed. "You're still a fool." "Guess that's why we made such a good pair." I injected him with another stim, watched a bit of color return to his cheeks. "You remember Sigma Draconis? That bug-infested hellhole? How could I forget? You took a chitinous claw to the thigh, thought we'd be peeling you off the ground. I snorted. Please, as if a glorified lobster could take me out. Besides, you patched me up good as new. Wasn't sure I could, he admitted. Claw missed your femoral artery by a hair if it had nicked it. But it didn't, because I had you. I met his eyes, tried to pour every ounce of conviction into my words. Just like you've got me now. So you just focus on staying alive, and let me worry about the doctoring. A ghost of a smile. Now there's a terrifying thought. I kept talking as I worked, spinning tales of human surgeons performing miracles in the heart of war zones, of doctors synthesizing cures from the most unlikely places. Anything to keep him awake, to keep that spark burning. All the while my mind raced. Malvora. The name sounded vaguely familiar, a half-remembered briefing from the early days of Pandronian contact. Some hotshot military official, all bluster and ambition, the type who saw war as a path to power. And now he had his sights set on the virus, on weaponizing a plague that had already brought a species to its knees. The mere thought made my blood boil, made me long for the simplicity of a straight fight. But this was beyond fists and firearms now. This was politics, the fate of worlds hanging in the balance. We had to find Zephyr, get the cure into the right hands before Malvora could pervert it. The alternative, I didn't want to imagine it. So I patched up Doc as best I could, tried not to think about Hawkins and Riggs out there alone, tried to have faith that we could pull this off. That even lost in the mire of galactic machinations, a handful of humans could make a difference. We had to. The alternative was too grim to contemplate. With Doc stabilized and the truth of Malvora's treachery revealed, we knew every second counted. Zephyr and the cure were still out there, and if that power-hungry maniac got her claws on them first, well, I didn't want to think about what would happen to the Pandronians then. Riggs worked his magic on the comms array, slicing through the interference like a plasma torch through butter. It wasn't long before he hit pay dirt, a tight beam transmission, heavily encrypted, bouncing between two far-flung coordinates. Got him, he said, eyes gleaming with triumph. Malvora's goons, sounds like they're arranging a rendezvous to hand off the package. I leaned in, studying the star map. The coordinates resolved into a remote sector, more void than stars. Let me guess. Neutral territory? Far from prying eyes? Riggs nodded. Bingo, and get this. The transmission originated from a Pandronian military vessel. Malvora's not even trying to hide her involvement anymore. Hawkins cracked his knuckles. So, we doing this, because I've got a few maneuvers I've been dying to try out. I glanced at Doc's unconscious form, then back at the eager faces of my crew. They were battered, exhausted, and running on stims and stubbornness. But I knew that look. They were hellhounds, through and through. They'd walk barefoot through the 9 hells if that's what it took to finish the mission. Damn right we're doing this, I said. Hawkins, plot a course. Riggs, see if you can't scrounge up some more ordnance from this scrap heap. It's time to teach Malvora what happens when you try to fuck with humanity. The asteroid field was a nightmare of tumbling rocks and choking dust, lit by the ghostly glow of a dying star. The perfect place for an illicit rendezvous, far from the reach of law or conscience. Multiple contacts, Riggs reported, hunched over the sensor array. Looks like a whole damn armada. He was right. Ships filled the scanner, a motley assortment of military craft and unmarked hulls. Malvora had called in everyone who owed her a favor, looks like. The cure must have been one hell of a bargaining chip. No sign of Zephyr's ship, Hawkins muttered, hands dancing over the controls, as he wove us through the asteroids. You think he's already here? If he is, he won't be for long. I chambered around in my rifle, felt the familiar kick against my shoulder. Take us in, quiet-like. It's time to crash this party. We slipped through the shadows of the asteroids running dark. Hawkins was in his element, coaxing every ounce of stealth from our battered engines. Riggs jury-rigged a dampening field, masking our heat signature. Just a few humans playing a very deadly game of hide-and-seek. The trap was simple. Let Malvora think she'd gotten away clean with her prize. Then, when her guard was down, hit her hard and fast from every angle. Surprise was our only advantage against numbers that badly outmatched our own. We ghosted into position, nestled in the crags of a rock the size of a small moon. And there, drifting in the center of the swarm, was our target, a sleek Pandronian corvette, bristling with guns. Malvora's flagship. "Boss," Riggs said softly, "I'm picking up a second ship coming in fast. It's Zephyr. He's alone." I watched the scientist's shuttle weave through the asteroids, engines flaring as it maneuvered to dock with Malvora's ship. He was either very brave or very stupid, probably both. "Wait for my signal," I breathed. "We move as soon as the cure changes hands." The seconds ticked by, each one an eternity. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears, feel the sweat beading on my brow. This was it, the moment of truth. And then, with a flash of docking lights, it was time. "Now!" I roared, and the void erupted into chaos. We came in hot, guns blazing, Hawkins jinking and juking like a man possessed. The Pandronian ships reacted instantly, a hurricane of return fire stitching the darkness. Our shields flared, absorbing the hits, but I knew they wouldn't hold for long. "Riggs, tell me you've got a lock on that cure," I shouted over the din of battle. "Negative," he yelled back, fingers flying over his console. "There's too much interference. I can't get a clear scan." I swore. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. It never was. "Hawkins, bring us in closer. We need a visual on—" The ship bucked like a drunken bronco as a lucky shot slammed into our flank. Alarms shrieked, red lights flashing like malevolent eyes. "Hull breach in the cargo bay," Riggs reported, voice tight. "Sealing it now, but our shields are toast." I made a split-second decision. "Hawkins, ram that corvette. We're going in, face to face." He shot me a wild grin. "Aye, Captain, ramming speed." The ship shuddered as Hawkins pushed the engines to their limits, weaving through the maelstrom of fire and flying metal. The corvette loomed before us, its hull scarred and pitted. I could see figures moving behind its viewports, scurrying like ants in a disturbed nest. With a bone-jarring crunch, we slammed into the larger ship's flank, grinding metal on metal. The impact threw me against my harness, breath whooshing from my lungs. For a moment, all was stillness and ringing silence. Then I was moving, prying myself from my restraints, rifle already in hand. "Riggs, Hawkins, with me. We're boarding." The airlock cycled, and then we were through, storming into the corvette's guts like the hounds of hell. Pandronian soldiers boiled out to meet us, weapons spitting fire. We returned it in kind, advancing behind a wall of lead and plasma. "Push forward," I roared over the bark of gunfire. "We need to find Malvora and Zephyr." We fought our way through the ship, a running battle that left the corridors choked with smoke and the dead. Every bulkhead, every hatch was a new hell, a new trial by fire. But we were hellhounds. This was what we were made for. And then, at last, we stumbled onto the bridge, a wide, vaulted space flickering with holograms and the flashes of weapons fire. And there, standing tall amid the chaos, was Malvora herself. She was clad in battle armor, her face a mask of cold fury. In one hand she clutched a gleaming vial, the cure. In the other a wicked-looking pulse rifle, leveled squarely at the slumped figure of Dr. Zephyr. "Humans," she spat, as if the word itself was poison. "You should not have come here." "It's over, Malvora," I said, my own rifle raised and ready. "Hand over the cure, now." She laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Over? You fool, it's only just begun." With a motion too quick to follow, she pressed the vial to her neck, depressing the plunger. I watched in horror as the cure vanished into her veins, her eyes flashing with triumph. "The cure is mine," she hissed, "and with it the power to rule, to reshape this galaxy as I see fit." A rage, hot and sharp, surged through me. This monster, this traitor, daring to pervert the one hope of her people for her own gain. It was too much, too cruel. With a wordless cry, I launched myself at her, rifle forgotten, hands outstretched. We crashed together, a tangle of limbs and hate grappling like beasts. She was strong, so strong, her enhanced body fueled by the cure's power. But I was stronger. I had to be. We rampaged across the bridge, smashing through consoles, tumbling over writhing bodies. Dimly I was aware of Hawkins and Riggs, fighting like demons to keep Malvora's troops at bay. But all my focus, all my fury, was reserved for her. I slammed my fist into her face, felt bone crunch beneath my knuckles. She reeled back, then surged forward, driving her knee into my gut. Air whooshed from my lungs, stars dancing before my eyes. But I didn't fall. I couldn't. We traded blows, each one a small eternity of pain and desperation. The cure made her fast, resilient, but it couldn't match the fire in my veins, the unquenchable human need to fight, to win, to survive. In the end, it was that fire that prevailed. With a final titanic effort, I wrapped my hands around her throat and squeezed, pouring every ounce of my strength into the grip. She thrashed and bucked, eyes bulging, but I held on, teeth bared in a snarl of defiance. And then, with a final shuddering gasp, she went limp. I let her fall, my own chest heaving, blood roaring in my ears. It was over. We had won. But the taste of victory was bitter on my tongue, because even as I staggered to my feet, I saw the shattered remains of the vial, its precious contents spilled across the deck like so much refuse. The cure, humanity's last hope to save a dying race, gone, destroyed in the fury of our battle. And there, slumped against a sparking console, was Doc, still and silent, his face a mask of peace amid the carnage. He had given everything, even his life, to see this mission through, and in the end, it had been for nothing. I stumbled to him, sank to my knees at his side. Hawkins and Riggs joined me, their faces grim, eyes haunted. We had won the battle, but the cost... I closed my eyes, felt the weight of it all crushing down on me. The Pandronians would live on, but at what price? Their cure was gone, their champion fallen. And what of humanity? What would we become in the wake of this hollow victory? I didn't know. All I knew was that we had to keep fighting. For Doc, for the Pandronians, for every soul in this cold, unforgiving universe who needed a champion. The Hellhounds would answer that call. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, it was who we were, who we would always be. I rose to my feet, my fallen friend cradled in my arms. Around me the ship burned and crumbled, a fitting pyre for a hero. We had a long road ahead, but we would walk it together, to whatever end. For in the end, that was the true strength of humanity. Not our weapons, not our ships, not even our indomitable will. It was our unbreakable bond, forged in the fires of adversity, our willingness to stand as one, even as the galaxy itself tried to tear us apart. And as long as we had that, there was no fight we couldn't win, no enemy we couldn't overcome, no darkness we couldn't light. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.